Hi there, I'm Destiny from Nifty Knittings, and today I'm going to show you how to knit the Rib Double Brim Knit Hat. It is a simple classic hat that features a double brim and a stockinette stitch body. For this project, we'll need 2 skeins of Sugarbush Crisp in the color Provincial Peach. It is a DK weight yarn. I'm also using US 6 and US 7 circular needles. And you may also need a set of US 7 double pointed needles or use the magic loop method, which is what I will be doing. We will also need a crochet hook for our provisional cast on and a long length of waste yarn to begin our cast on. So I'm going to start by making a slip knot with my waste yarn and putting that on my crochet hook. So I just like to twist the yarn over and pull one end through to create my slip knot. I'll show you that again. So I just create a little twist in the yarn, grab the yarn and pull it through the loop. I'm going to place this on my crochet hook and tighten it up a bit. And then I hold the tail of the waste yarn with my US 6 needle, which is what I will be casting onto. And I hold the working yarn in my right hand. And we're going to wrap the waste yarn around the needle, around the back of the knitting needle, grab it with the crochet hook and pull it through the loop on the crochet hook. And that is 1 stitch cast on. So we're going to bring the yarn around the back of the needle, over the needle, and crochet it through the loop on the hook. So this is how we are doing our provisional cast on. If you have another method that you prefer, feel free to use that. This is just what I found to be the easiest. So we'll just keep wrapping our yarn around the needle and through with the crochet hook, and we are going to cast on 96 stitches. Once you have your 96 stitches casted onto the needle, we will just cut our waste yarn and chain a few stitches with our crochet hook. So just grab the yarn with your hook and pull it through the loop for a few times, and then just pull it all the way through. And so for our first row, we're just going to knit 1 row across the needles. After the first row, then we will join in the round and begin our ribbed brim. So I'm just joining my working yarn and knitting across this row. You may notice I'm using a longer than 16-inch cable needle. I'm using a 40-inch so that I can use the traveling loop and eventually the magic loop method for the decreases. But if you're more comfortable with a 16-inch and double pointed needles, then you should stick with that. Once we've knit our row, we're now going to join in the round to begin working the brim of the hat. And before we do that, we want to go through and make sure that none of our stitches are twisted. I'm just going to slide my stitches to the other end of the needle and go through and just make sure they're all facing the same direction. Now we're ready to join in the round. If you're using a 16-inch circular, go ahead and place a stitch marker before starting your brim. And now we're just going to work a knit 1, purl 1 rib for this round. I'm just going to knit, tighten up that first stitch there after a couple of stitches, and purl, and just keep repeating knit 1, purl 1 for this round. Once you finish the first round, we're going to keep repeating it, knitting 1, purling 1, until our brim measures 5 inches tall. I finished knitting my brim. It's now 5 inches tall from the provisional cast on edge. And now we will be joining our provisional stitches together with the stitches on our needle. So to do that, we will be slowly removing the waste yarn that we started with and knitting 2 stitches together from the live stitches on our needle to the provisional stitches. Now we want to switch to a US 7 needle. I'm using an interchangeable set, so I'm just going to change the tip of my needle to a 7. If you're using fixed circulars, you can just start knitting with your US 7 needle. So now we will go ahead and fold the brim inwards and line up the cast on edge with our live stitches on our needle, like so. And we will slowly be removing the blue waste yarn, 1 stitch at a time. So I've got my stitches lined up, and now I'm just going to start undoing my chain that we did at the end of the provisional cast on. Let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit. So if you let's get our tail out of the way here. If you tug on the chain a little bit, you can kind of see the path where the blue yarn goes through the pink yarn, and that is the path that we want to knit through. So I'll show you a little bit of what I mean here. So I'm just going to remove my chain stitches. Pull that chain until there's 1 stitch left there. Then I'm just going to tug on this blue stitch to show you where that first pink stitch is that we need to get to. So we're just going to follow the path of the blue yarn, put our needle into the first stitch on our left needle and into that first stitch from the provisional cast on, and then you can remove the waste yarn and then knit these 2 stitches together. I'll show you that again. So we'll put our right needle through the first stitch on our left needle, and then through the next stitch from our cast on. Pull the cast on waste yarn out, and then knit these 2 stitches together. We'll go into that first stitch, into the provisional stitch, pull the waste yarn out, and knit them together. This does take a little bit of time, but it makes a really nice seamless edge, and it's really comfortable to wear. Pull that waste yarn out and knit them together. So I'll keep continuing until all 96 stitches have been worked in this way, and then we can start on the body of the hat. So into that first stitch, into the provisional stitch behind it, and knit them together. So I finished joining my double brim together, and I'm just going to remove the waste yarn from that last stitch, and now we are ready to knit the body. So our double brim is joined nicely, there's no real seam, kind of makes a nice little pocket on the inside. So still continuing with my US 7 needles, I'm just going to knit each round for the body until it measures 6 inches from the bottom of the brim. I finished working the body, and it now measures 6 inches from the bottom of the brim. And now we will start our decreases. So for the decreases, I will use 8 stitch markers to kind of divide the hat up to make the decreases a little bit easier to see. So first I'm going to knit 10 and then knit 2 stitches together. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then I'm going to knit these next 2 stitches together and place my first marker. And then we'll just keep repeating this. Knit 10 again. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Knit 2 together and place my second marker. So we'll continue repeating this, knitting 10, knitting 2 together, and placing a marker for this whole round until you have 8 markers placed. I finished my first decrease round and all my markers are placed. Now the next round is just a plain knit round. We will knit all the stitches and slip the markers as we go them. Our next round is another decrease round, which will be worked in the same manner as before, except we will use our markers as a guide to tell us where we need to decrease. So we'll knit until there are 2 stitches before each marker and then knit those 2 stitches together. So really we're knitting 9 here, and then we'll knit 2 together. Now I have 2 stitches before my marker, so I'm going to knit these 2 together and slip my marker. And keep repeating that. Knit until there are 2 stitches before your marker and knit 2 together. So we'll continue repeating a plain knit round followed by this decrease round until there are 32 stitches left. So I have 32 stitches left on my needles, and I can easily tell that by counting 4 stitches between each marker. So once you have 32 stitches left, we will have our final decrease round, and we will knit 2 together all around. We can just remove the markers as we go. Knit 2 together, remove our markers. Now I have 16 stitches left. So I'm just going to cut my yarn and thread it on a tapestry needle or a yarn needle and weave it through the remaining 16 stitches. And then we'll just cinch it up a little bit to close it up. And I actually like to go back through and weave it through those same 16 stitches one more time, just to make sure that it's really secure. And then close it up and thread that through the center of the hat. And then we can weave in our ends on the inside. When I weave in my ends, I just follow the path of the yarn for about an inch or so, and then cut the yarn. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this pattern. You can find more of my patterns and tutorials at niftyknittings.com.